comorbid with an autism spectrum disorder. From my experience, what I've observed, I've been in some groups on Facebook. Typically not a group person. I don't really like the way people interact in groups on the internet, but these are just some things that I've kind of observed and noticed and other people talking about. So I just wanted to cover those, so then other people can kind of, maybe if they're on the fence about their diagnosis or not sure, then these might kind of help to solidify or confirm possibly an autism diagnosis for yourself. Though these things don't necessarily indicate you're autistic. I've just kind of noticed that they're things that people deal with, and also myself throughout my life. Like, I've always had these things and not really understood or known why or what they were about, so I'm just going to go into those now. So the first one I put is that I've noticed, I'm not sure about the men, I think I've seen this with men as well, but there's like a strong occurrence of people identifying as non-binary, or just not feeling that they fit comfortably into like a gender sort of binary. And I've always kind of felt I was a tomboy when I was younger, but I was also girly, so it was like I liked girly things like dresses and earrings, and then eventually as I got older I got into makeup, but I was also a tomboy and I loved wearing boys' clothes, and if I was watching a show and there'd be like one of the main characters was a man who was like cool, and like I'd try to like dress like him, but I'd also try to dress like the female main characters, so it's like I've never seen a difference really between being male or female. In my opinion, they embody the same energy, and there's not really much difference. Like I think there is a masculine and a feminine energy, but like it's kind of blurred and all over the place, and like we kind of more embody all of it. And I never really could figure out what that was about. And it's taken me till recently to realise that's kind of like where I'm at with it. Like, people couldn't really understand that I was not girly. They're like, well, you present very girly, but then it's like I do things that are not girly, and then people say stuff like, well, gender's a construct, which in some ways it is, but at the same time, like, I think it's important to acknowledge and recognise that we don't. I think we're just in this mindset that those things aren't important, and when you're autistic, it's like that's an inefficient way to think, is by trying to categorize people into gender. So it's much easier for us to just kind of end up somewhere in the middle. So yeah, that's kind of like how I feel about it. I don't know, maybe you have that experience, but the other one is mental illness, number 2. And this is something that obviously everyone experiences, but it's very common in autism to have an anxiety disorder as well as depression. Sorry, my phone just died. Depression is very common. Bipolar disorder, personality disorders, possibly borderline, I think is one, though sometimes it's misdiagnosed. Like, a lot of women are misdiagnosed with borderline when they actually have autism, but they can occur together. And I think that when you're an autistic woman especially, because borderline seems to be diagnosed more in women, funnily, and I think when you're an autistic woman and you've had a lifetime of not knowing, and then you've had trauma because of your autism and having to deal with the world in such an intense way, it can kind of create this like personality disorder type of issue or defense. But I think I don't fully fit. For me, I had one psychiatrist who thought I might have borderline. I was technically diagnosed with bipolar type 2, but the one who thought I might be borderline, after assessing me, said, oh, I might actually be wrong about you. And like, because it was like a lot of the things that he said didn't fit with how I felt, but I do experience emotions in a very extreme and strong way sometimes that I can't regulate, but I think that's a very autistic thing. So it was like, you know, but it just, if I get very triggered by someone, like in a relationship sense, like friends like dropping me or abandoning me or something, I tend to really get really crazy about that, I think, a little bit. So anyway, number 3 is asexuality, or asexuality is a spectrum as well. So I put here demisexuality. For me, I identify as demisexual because I have to get to know somebody on a certain level before I can feel sexual with them, typically. I mean, sometimes off the bat I can have an attraction, but then I'll be intimate, but then I'll have to take a step back and then get to know the person properly before I can do that again, which I think is not common, but it can happen with demisexuality, where you will have that kind of initial attraction, but then you won't be able to continue it if you don't build that strong foundation of like trust and like the emotional connection. So that's very important for my sexuality to be able to work. But I'm actually a very sexual person, so it's kind of like, I think people think if you're asexual or demisexual, you can't be sexual, you don't have a sex drive, but it's like, you can, but it's like, it just expresses differently. And I might make a separate video about sexuality with autism from my perspective, because it's quite an interesting topic, actually. It's taken me a while to like really understand like what was going on with my sexuality and why it felt so different to everyone else. But I have noticed that this can be a thing, and sometimes I think the asexual aspect of women on the spectrum might not even be that they're necessarily asexual, but they're not taught to be in tune with the sexual aspect of themselves. They don't really understand it. So that could be it, but I don't know. I think there is also just asexuality and ace, or whatever they call it, you know, aromantic, asexual, no interest in a romantic connection, no interest in sex, just like friendships or connections, and that's pretty much it. Number 5, I've put autoimmune issues and food sensitivities, allergies, sensitive to chemicals and additives. This has been something that I've noticed I've progressively got worse with as time goes on, as I get older, and I find that I have to eat a very pure diet of things that are very simple and natural, and I do really well with stuff, you know. I always used to make fun of people who like did all organic and like, you know, spent loads of money at Whole Foods and all that, but I find I am kind of like that kind of person where I have to have very pure things in my body to feel good, and like my body reacts very intensely to chemicals or things that aren't natural to the body, and that includes medications and stuff as well. Like I react so strongly to like medications that I sometimes just can't even take them because I'm so sensitive, and in the sense that it affects me very much psychologically, but also physiologically, in that like I'm prone to getting rashes and just having general bad reactions to chemicals. So anyway, so there's that. My phone keeps like running out of storage because I've got to like move some stuff. But anyway, the 6th one I put, and I don't know if this is like actually a thing, if this is accurate, but I put oppositional defiant disorder because I wasn't like this as a child. In fact, I was kind of the opposite. But I've noticed as I age, it becomes increasingly harder for me to just do what I'm told. And I've been in so many situations where someone's told me to do something, and just based on being told what to do, I won't do it. And some people might say, oh, that's so childish and petty or something, but it's like, it's almost like I can't, and everything in me just builds up and it's like, you gotta tell me what to do. And this happened to me recently in a group on Facebook for Twin Flame. I'm in a Twin Flame group, which is kind of like a spiritual group type of thing, there was this rule, like, you can't post anything about being upset about your twin flame relationship. And so, feeling misunderstood, I would almost always purposely, like, post, like, you know, things about it, how I was frustrated and upset. And one day the admin, the guy who creates it, just said, these types of things aren't allowed, and you're not allowed to, it's like, you're not allowed to do that, this is my group, my rules, and the object isn't to focus on this person, it's to spiritually ascend and all this stuff. And I was just like, but you have to give people breathing room and space to vent and, like, express themselves. Isn't that the point in a group? Like, that seems so weird to me. And, like, being told what to do, I eventually pushed it so much that the guy, yeah, so anyway, I was kicked out of his group. I was like, okay, well, you know, that's fair, because I'm, you know, obviously, yeah, it is your rules, but I don't want to abide by them because I think they're unfair. So maybe it's just a matter of not liking things that aren't fair. I know is very true for me. I can't say that's true for, like, a lot of autistic people, but I'm sure that a lot of autistic people also feel an injustice against, you know, they feel when something's been strongly an injustice and not fair. And yeah, what was I going to say about that? Yeah, I just think autistic people are very kind people, and I was in this group, and I think it was very, I'd say things like, I'm autistic and I'm experiencing this spiritual, you know, I'm experiencing this, and then they'd sort of be like, well, they'd say it's no excuse. I'm like, fuck you, because autism, I'm not using it as an excuse, I'm letting you know that I'm literally wired differently. But anyway, there's enough about that. But I think it's like I was coming into this space that was so different from my mentality towards things, and I've got this very fair kind of view of things where I like things to be fair and kind, and you can still be blunt and tell people what you think and how you feel, but to hold space for people to be and, like, to experience a negative emotion, because I think that's really important. Anyway, thanks for joining my video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and click subscribe. And I'm going to be making a lot more videos, so I'd love it if you could check them out and join me on this interesting autistic journey, because I'm still learning so much too. It's such a new diagnosis for me, even though I've known for a long time. But it took till the official kind of diagnosis for it to really sink in and try to, like, accept these things. And, like, I'm noticing patterns all the time of different things affecting me, and, like, you know, how they affect other people on the spectrum too. So, and I love to make videos and entertain people. So yes, thank you for joining, and goodbye.